But before we get to them, I have a question for you, one that's never asked. You hear it said all the time that under Article 1 of the Constitution, Congress has the power of the purse, only Congress. Congress lays taxes. Congress determines borrowing amounts. Congress determines spending amounts. And so I have some questions for you. Is that an unlimited power? Is that a power that's unchecked? Can Congress do whatever it wants when it comes to spending and borrowing and taxing? Well, of course, they have to vote on it. And of course, the president has to sign it. Of course, the president has a veto power. Of course, you have elections and people come and go. That's not my question. As a constitutional matter, can Congress do whatever it wants with the power of the purse? Let me give you an example. If Congress passes a massive bill, they pass these omnibus bills all the time where the members don't even know what's in it, which raises a serious question in the first place. Is that legitimate? Our representatives are spending money and they don't even know what they're spending money on? And then they delegate the power through these massive trillion-dollar spending bills to a bureaucracy that's not even in the Constitution, that doesn't represent us. We don't know who these people are. And they put that bureaucracy that's legislating and making determinations about spending in the executive branch? I thought the determinations about the power of the purse were made in Congress, not by an unelected bureaucracy that's not in the Constitution, that is established in the executive branch. So my first premise is this. Much of what you see going on in society today has no connection to the Constitution whatsoever. Nothing. Zero. The framers never contemplated anything like our massive bureaucracy. The American Marxists, that is, the progressives of old, they're the ones who came up with the idea, established it. Their party, the Democrat Party, pushed it hard, funded it, created it. So this whole thing that exists right now has no constitutional basis whatsoever. So the lawyers out there will say, but the Supreme Court ruled. I don't care what the Supreme Court ruled. I'm not talking about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court in many ways has to make things work. I'm talking about what does your Constitution provide? Your Constitution, not some Supreme Court in the 1940s and so forth. Your Constitution. It provides none of this. Now, the power of the purse, they gave it to Congress, not unelected judges and not the executive. The legislature makes spending determinations. But does it? What's an omnibus bill? It's a massive spending bill, the particulars of which nobody knows. And then it goes to the bureaucracy, again, which has no place in our constitutional construct. So you have people who are mid-level bureaucrats, lower-level bureaucrats, maybe manager bureaucrats, making decisions about hundreds of billions of dollars and where that money's supposed to go. Is that what the framers had in mind? Of course it's not what they had in mind. That's not anything close to any kind of a constitutional construct that they or anybody else was contemplating. Okay. Next question. Does Congress have the power to bankrupt the country under the spending clause? What, Mark? I'm very serious about this. Congress is in charge of the spending bills, borrowing, taxing. Does Congress have the power to bankrupt our country? What do you think the framers would say? Of course not. We set up a limited government with checks and balances. Limited. Article 1 gives Congress what powers it actually has. All this spending that President Trump, Elon Musk, and the team is finding, the framers would be shaking their head. What the hell does this have to do with the federal government? What the hell does this have to do with the American people? What the hell does this have to do with a constitutional system? Nothing. Zero. None of this is contemplated, not because those are the old days and these are the modern days. No. In fact, what's happening in our government is pretty primitive. Nobody really knows what the hell's going on. And so you have Trump comes in and he says, well, I want to know what's going on. I want to know what's going on in the executive branch, whether they put the bureaucracy here. I've got to take a look at it. They're spending money left and right. I've got to take a look at it. If I don't look at it, nobody else is, including our vaulted Congress that has the power of the purse. $500 billion a year, up to $500 billion a year, says the GAO, is wasted. Waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm the president. I'm in charge of making sure the money is spent wisely. No? So the answer is yes. Does Congress have the right to fund fraud under the power of the purse? Fraud, Mark? Of course not. Okay. So the executive has the power to find out if there's fraud then, right? Right. Then what are these federal judges doing trying to stop him? What about waste, fraud, and abuse? Does Congress have the power under the power of the purse to spend money in ways that are incredibly wasteful and abusive? Where friends of the Democrat Party are being larded up with billions of dollars with their so-called nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations, some kind of ideological objective or whatever. Does Congress have that power? Should it? Should it? We never ask about the power of Congress. Look at Congress over the last decades. Congress can't even get a budget done on time. Ever. Congress can't ever balance the budget. Ever. Congress can't get the debt under control. Ever. We're now paying $1 trillion, soon to be $1.2 trillion, to finance the debt. Now again, the framers of the Constitution would never have imagined such irresponsibility. But do you think the framers of your Constitution would say it's the job of the president just to ignore it all and just keep rubber stamping it? So why do the Democrats, the left, their media and academia, why do these phony constitutional law professors saying that basically Donald Trump, the executive, has no role, despite the fact it's all in the executive branch? Because they're Marxists/socialists. They're cultural Marxists, economic socialists. This is what they want. This is what they've created. You see, America, if you begin going down and through the process of actually looking at what's taking place, you're destroying the whole idea of omnibus spending bill, where we, the people, have no idea what the money's spending on. So on the spending end, Congress on the front end, the omnibus bill on the spending end, Donald Trump is saying, well, I want to take a look. And so they're fighting him. They're fighting them with their judges. They're fighting them in the media. They're fighting them in Congress. And then they tell you we have a constitutional crisis. What Congress is doing is aconstitutional. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives them the power to bankrupt the country. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives them this ubiquitous spending, borrowing, and taxing power to spend, borrow whatever they want on whatever they want and tax any way they want. Now, you can't write in a governing document all the little details and specifics. It's not a mortgage. It's not a contract to purchase a car or something like that. This is a governing document. And they said early on, if the people aren't virtuous and the representatives aren't virtuous, this won't last. But no constitutional republic, especially ours, is required to go along with this. In other words, you've got this massive bureaucracy, this fourth branch of government that has no constitutional basis whatsoever. Again, regardless of what the Supreme Court says, it has none. What's the Supreme Court? 9 really smart lawyers in black robes. Okay. Some of us don't have black robes, but we know what we're talking about. Then these omnibus spending bills, just trillions of dollars out the door, $7 trillion, or we have the Inflation Reduction Act, which had nothing to do with inflation, everything to do with climate change. They didn't even spend all the money. They're pushing it out the door near the end. Tens of billions of dollars at a time, $500 billion waste, fraud, and abuse, the GAO says, and Trump's just supposed to, don't look, rubber stamp it. No, Congress does not have the power to bankrupt America. Congress does not have the power to fund fraud. And if in these massive omnibus bills they're funding massive amounts of waste, fraud, and abuse, up to $500 billion a year, I doubt that's a legitimate constitutional power Congress has as well. And so Congress's responsibilities need to be exposed, and what Congress does needs to be exposed as well. Now, these judges, very, very interesting, who are trying to prevent Donald Trump from preventing waste, fraud, and abuse. I just went back and I counted before the program how many of these cases have been brought. 94. 94 cases. And I just took a random look. They're not all Democrat judges, but the vast majority are. The vast majority are. Some of them are Republican-appointed judges, with a caveat. Some of them were appointed by Republicans, like in the case of Seattle by Reagan, as part of a deal where he picked a liberal Democrat judge in order to get 2 more conservative judges through. And those deals at the federal district court level have been made for more than 100 years, probably. So when they say it's a Reagan judge and so forth, you got to take a look. But I took a look at some of these judges who are right in the middle of this. And it's no accident that the petitioners who are bringing these cases are bringing them mostly in Washington, D.C., Seattle, Washington, Boston, Massachusetts, New York, Manhattan, places heavy concentration of Democrats and where you're most likely to get a judge who's been appointed by Clinton, Obama, or Biden. And some of these judges, the key judges right now, were appointed by Biden and Obama. We have Judge Abelson. Now, he's blocking the anti-DEI efforts of the administration. He was just appointed by Biden in the last 2 years or so. We have Judge Alikham, appointed by Biden. Judge Alikham is blocking the freezing of federal funding, where Trump said, I want to take a look at this. He said, no, you can't. We have Judge Ali, perhaps the most radical of the bunch. He has ordered Trump to actually spend money on foreign aid. When Trump says, no, I don't want to spend that money, I want to look at it. John Roberts in the court stepped in and said, not so fast, Judge Ali. We're going to take a look at this. He was appointed by Biden. We have Judge Vargas, appointed by Biden, blocks access to Treasury Department payment systems. We have Judge Boardman, appointed by Biden, blocked access to personnel records. Doesn't the president have a right to know who's working for his government and if they're actually working for his government? We have Judge Amy Berman Jackson. She is a huge radical in Washington, appointed by Obama. She's forced the reinstatement of a so-called watchdog fired by Trump. You see how they're micromanaging the executive branch, which is trying to manage this massive bureaucracy that's not even in the Constitution? Oh, and by the way, none of these judges are either. They're created by a Judiciary Act. They're created by Congress. So the one person who is created by the Constitution, Donald Trump and the presidency, we're told, has no say, has no power. Nation's gone bankrupt. The debt's going through the ceiling. The value of the currency's going down. He just needs to watch. Leave it to the unelected judges. Leave it to the unelected bureaucrats. And leave it to Congress that's using the power of the purse to destroy the country. We have a Judge John McConnell, I believe out of Boston, appointed by Obama. He blocked the president's freeze on grants and loans. We have a Judge Kacharis, appointed by Obama, blocked a freeze of the government, Trump's, on grant and loans. We have Judge Herson, appointed by Biden. He's blocked the transgender order from the administration. We have Judge Engelmayer, appointed by Obama, blocked access to payroll systems, to payment systems, so they can figure out if there's fraud going on. We have Judge Kelly, appointed by Biden. She blocked cuts to personnel grants. They're running the executive branch. These judges are micromanaging the executive branch. Now, where do they get that power? They have no such power, none whatsoever. Zero. They don't have the power to trump the legitimate actions of a president of the United States. They don't have the power to run the human resources departments in the federal government, to decide what's on their websites, to decide whether the president can fire or offer people early retirement. They don't have the power to do any of these things. And yet they're doing them. So first, we establish Congress does not have the power to bankrupt America. It does not have the power to fund fraudulent activities. In addition to the fact they don't even know what the hell they're funding under these omnibus bills. The president does have a power to see what's being spent. He does have the power to determine whether fraud's taking place and waste and abuse, and he's not required to rubber stamp it. And now we've established these judges do not have the power to micromanage the executive branch, the bureaucracy, all the decisions that an elected president, elected in the entirety of the United States, gets to make, because the bureaucracy is not in the Constitution. The bureaucrats aren't elected. These judges aren't in the Constitution. They're created by Congress, and they don't have the power to micromanage the executive branch either. So what do we have here? You ready for this? I'm sorry to upset you. We have a post-constitutional America. What's being done now is an effort to wrap the Constitution around activities, institutions that are taking place that are not in the Constitution. The Constitution was never amended to do any of these things. So we're taking the Constitution, the Supreme Court will, no doubt, and try and figure out how to wrap it around all these things that are taking place and then try to assort and assign who has what authority and who does not. That's what's taking place. And this has been going on since the early American Marxists, aka progressives, the late 1800s. Woodrow Wilson to Franklin Roosevelt to Lyndon Johnson, and on and on and on. And the reason they're so furious on the left and the Democrat Party and the media about efforts to look at what's taking place and to stop what's taking place and on and on and on. The reason why they're attacking Donald Trump and calling him unconstitutional, which is really quite ironic, preposterous, is because this scam has been going on for a long time. You're paying for it. Your children and grandchildren and generations yet born, they're going to pay for it in a humongous way because they're not going to be able to dig out. So why is this being done? Anybody know? Why are the Democrats doing this? Why is the ruling class in Washington doing this with several Republicans? Why do the media support this? Why? Power. Power. And power. They want the power in Washington. They want the power in the ruling class. The Democrat Party wants the power in the party. The party is more important than the country. It's about power. Exactly what the Constitution was constructed to prevent. We'll be right back.